Hello and welcome to the Kuriaknits channel. My name is Erin and I'm so glad that you've joined me here today. It has been a little bit, but I'm so happy to be here sharing with you some of my knitting. I have two finished objects. I've got only two things actively on my needles right now, and then I have some yarn acquisitions to show you. I have some wonderful Canadian yarn to share as part of the Great Canadian MKAL, which I am hosting with the lovely Rachel of the We'll See podcast, and I will talk a little bit about that later. But I wanted to start this podcast off with first talking about what I'm wearing, as it's, I think, my favorite thing that I've ever made and the most intensely wearable. And what I am wearing is my Shrike Cardigan. The second sample of my Shrike. This pattern, as of you viewing this, is now out, which is very exciting. You can find it on my Ravelry down below. It is a broken rib cardigan, and I firmly believe it'll become a staple in your wardrobe as it has mine. I have been blitzing through knitting this one. I knit the sleeves one a day, which is a lot for me, but it is so worth it. It's just the most wearable cardigan I've ever made. I'm constantly going through this cycle of doubt where I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I make this and it doesn't fit? And I have to continuously remind myself that I'm a competent knitwear designer who's able to create things that flatter not only my own body, but other people's bodies really well. And my philosophy on designing is I only really design if there's something in the world that I see that I want, that I cannot find. And this was one of them, this broken rib cardigan. I was looking around Ravelry for a while and I couldn't find one that really was what I was looking for. I was looking for one that I could knit on around a 4mm needle, so around like 20 to 23 stitch gauge. And I was looking for something with a drop shoulder, and I could find a few raglans, but none like this. And the funny thing is that I'm coming out with this, and I've seen on Ravelry some other designers making their own versions of broken rib cardigans. So I think I was not the only one to see that gap, I suppose, but I really hope that you guys will like this design and will check it out. It would mean a lot to me if you did. This is called the Shrike Cardigan after one of my favorite Hozier songs, which is called Shrike. Hozier is one of my favorite artists of all time. I just adore his music, and to be able to name one of my patterns after one of his songs is really special for me. So as I said, it has a v-neck construction and a double knit button band. Why don't I show you on the purple version, because I can hold it up here and I'll have cutaways as well. So this is my first sample made in this stunning lavender color. So it has a drop shoulder design on the back, which really flows nicely. I really love it. And then it has a double knit button band, and then the broken rib continued down on the sleeves here. And I really love the way that this turned out. Both of mine are slightly cropped. They hit just above the waist because I wanted to wear them both with skirts and high-waisted jeans, because that's basically all I wear. But I had some of my sample knitters, testers, who have been absolutely incredible. They've knit theirs longer, and it looks really good in a longer shape as well, if that is something that you are interested in knitting instead. I think the most challenging part is the double knit button band, but from what I've seen from my testers is that once you get into the swing of it, it goes really fast. And I've complained about double knit button bands in the past, not the looks. I've always thought that they look absolutely incredible, but the time, and I will say that as I'm doing more of them, the time is getting faster. So I was able to knit this double knit button band in like 3 days of knitting time. Unfortunately, I don't know what that means in hours because it probably varied, but for me that's very quick, because when I knit my first double knit button band in the April cardigan, it took like weeks. So I'm so glad that I am getting a little bit faster, and it makes double knit button bands a little bit more feasible for me. I selected these buttons here for this cardigan, and these buttons are actually lifted off of an old Roots sweater, so they're Roots buttons, which is kind of fun. And the old Roots sweater completely disintegrated. And it's funny, both of the black cardigans that I've had as of recent have basically disintegrated because I wear them so much. So I'm very excited to have this, because the one that I replaced the Roots one with a couple years ago is now also near disintegration, which is also speaks to fast fashion. That one's H&M and thrifted, so it was probably very well loved before I even got my hands on it. But now I've got my very own in wool and mohair blend. This cardigan is also part of the Great Canadian Make-Along. The Make-Along is running to the end of the year, and I would love to see more people participate. There's wonderful prizes, which I will talk about near the end, but all you have to do is knit something from a Canadian designer, so the Shrike Cardigan could count. But also, we want to celebrate Canadian yarn, and this yarn is from one of my favorite and local to me Canadian makers, Wellington Fibers, and this is their 70-30 blend, so it's 70% 70% wool and 30% mohair. And unlike most other times where you think of using mohair in a project, you're using the mohair as its own strand. This has the mohair spun into it, so it's one yarn, but it has mohair and wool content, and I just love the fabric it creates. It's unbelievably warm. This is their sport base, and this pattern traditionally calls for a DK weight, so my original sample was knit in Filcolana and one strand of Filcolana Rivetta and one strand of Sandnes Garden Tin Silk mohair, so I think that fingering plus mohair really suits this pattern well. I think it gives a really beautiful drape to your cardigan. But I wanted to try one with just one strand, and for my own knitting in my own self, I find that I'm often replacing when it's fingering in mohair that's traditionally thought of as DK, but I know for my own knitting I can get away with sport, and often it looks better in sport. It creates a little bit of a less dense fabric, and I'm very white, so you can see that this fabric isn't as dense. Of course, you can pick a fabric that is to your own liking of density, but I personally have found that for cardigans especially, I don't love a really dense fabric on myself, so I went with something that would be a little bit less dense for my body, or to live on my body, if that makes sense. So I am thrilled to be bringing this out to all of you guys, and I want to give as well a huge thank you to all of my testers. I will put up some of their versions here if they've shared pictures of it, and I am just so excited to see more of them out in the world. This cardigan I've kind of poured my heart and soul into. It's been a labor of love. It has been overwhelming at times, to be honest with you, to be running a test in the fall. I think I need to take things a little bit slower when it comes to designing, just because life is very full right now, and that's a huge blessing, but it's also, it's a lot. There's a lot happening. Regardless, I'm just thrilled to be able to have this cardigan in my own life, and even if no one goes out and sees the pattern, I'm just so thankful to have a design that I really love, that I can continue to go back to, because I know that 2 Shrike cardigans will not be where I stop. I'm also interested in seeing, maybe there'll be a Shrike sweater in the future. I don't know. I don't know if there's like a want out there for a broken rib sweater, and by want out there I mean in me. Do I want that? I don't know. I don't want to be making things that I don't necessarily want. But the other thing I was thinking about when knitting this one actually is that because it's a drop shoulder, I feel like it could make a really cool buttoned vest, and so even if I don't come out with that, that might be something I make for myself, and then maybe just release the mods for that kind of thing. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking of for the Shrike, but I just want to thank you all for your support. It was, when I first started on the purple cardigan, I thought it would just be for me, and it was your guys' encouragement that made me think, well, maybe I can put this out, and now it is going to be out in the world, and I'm just thrilled to be able to do that, and you guys have trusted me to be able to make something that maybe one day you'll want to wear, so thank you so much for that. Before I show you my next finished object, I would first like to thank Ana Luisa for sponsoring this episode. Ana Luisa is a sustainable jewelry brand that I love. I'm really impressed with the quality of their pieces, and doubly so since I've recently got my ears pierced. And so I have been wearing exclusively their earrings basically since I could trade out my earrings. And if you didn't see in the last episode, I had changed out my earrings far earlier than they had wanted me to, like the piercer had wanted me to. And all my ears didn't love that. They did not react to the Ana Luisa jewelry whatsoever, and I think that's such a testament to their quality. So I actually changed out the ones I was wearing, the Huggies I was wearing last time, to the thicker the slightly thicker sister of them, and these ones are just beautiful. These are the Nate Huggies. I love that they're just a little bit thicker. I love that they're Huggies so that when I sleep on my side they don't irritate me at all, so I've been keeping them in forever. I haven't taken them out basically, and I am just so in love with the way that these look. They make me want even more earrings so that I can have this like up here and then have a whole stack. It's basically getting my ears pierced has made me want to be one of those people with a whole stack in their ear. They sent me 2 other pairs of earrings. These are the Percy Silver, and I'll put a photo up on a model because they'll be able to get way more closer to the ear than I ever could. But when you put these in, it looks like there's 2 earrings in your ear, and to that end I got this other pair as well that are studs, and again when you put them in your ear it looks like you've got 2 earrings in your ear. So I'm creating that stacked look without even having to get another hole in my ear, which is very exciting for me. I've been thinking a lot about what to gift people in my own life, and I think that Ana Luisa jewelry would make an excellent choice for the person in your life that wears jewelry. I focus a lot on their silver jewelry, but they have a great selection of gold as well. Ana Luisa always has deals going on their website right now. You can get 20 to 30% off depending on the amount of pieces of jewelry that you buy, but you can also always use my code down below, kuriaknits20, and I'd like to thank you so much for listening and thank Ana Luisa for sponsoring this portion of the episode. Okay, so let's move on to the next finished object. Why don't I change into it so that I can show you what it looks like, and then I will take it back off again to show you some of the details of it because it is beautiful. Okay, so I have finally finished the Tendreil Sweater. I went right up to the wire on this one. The test knit was due like mid last week or 2 weeks ago now, and I finished it the day before it was due, which is ridiculous because Sophie, the knit pro girl who designed this beautiful pattern, gave us so much lead time, and I knit it to the wire. Like I just completely, because it was such a long test period, I think I just kind of forgot I was testing this pattern and was just knitting away on it. And it's not because it's not fun, it's not because of anything, I don't know, I was just working on other things, specifically that Shrike Cardigan, which last time you saw was like a little piece of fabric, and now is like a whole garment. So this is the Tendreil Sweater. It is knit in Blue Sky Fibers woolstock worsted, which is one of my favorite yarns. This yarn was reclaimed from a sweater that I had knit a year or 2 ago that just wasn't one that I was reaching for, and because it's one of my favorite yarns, I wanted to knit it into something else. I don't think this color is necessarily flattering. I could certainly tell in the viewfinder that my skin tone definitely looks like it's changed a little bit, especially coming off of that black. I think in the color analysis I'm a winter, so I think black actually suits me quite well, whereas this sandy color is just not really it for my complexion, but that's okay because it's so intensely wearable with other things. The originality of this Tendreil Sweater is this cabled, oh, it's not showing up well here, this cabled zigzag here. You'll be able to see it more in Sophie's photos. She's so good at taking photos. I was trying to take photos in this sweater, and I was looking at the way that she posed in this sweater, and I just could not make it work. So if you're watching this, Sophie, I just think you're a great photographer. But this has it's a drop shoulder kit design. It has this subtle cabling on this side here. Last time I showed it, I think I had shown that I was trying to do the cable on the sleeve, but I ended up messing up. For me, the only modification that I made for this sweater is that I added more to the arms. For whatever reason, when I picked up the arm stitches, even though I'm on gauge, they were a bit tight for my arms. So if you find that you are often someone needing a little bit extra arm room, I would just add a few extra stitches. I haven't looked at the final pattern, so if you might have lengthened or added more stitches already, but I would just be cognizant of how your arm is fitting into the sleeve and maybe not do almost an entire sleeve before you check that like I did. You never know. The other thing that I learned with this is because I'm knitting with reclaimed yarn, I know Blue Sky Fibers woolstock worsted to be one that grows at least an inch or 2 usually for me in length when blocking, and this sweater did not do that, and I think it's because it was already knit yarn, which is a learning curve for me. I've knit with already knit yarns, but I didn't know there were yarns that I weren't as familiar with, whereas this one I was really familiar with, and I was expecting, for example, the sleeve to grow to be about here, which is where I like it, and it probably sits about there when my hand is down, and I was expecting it to grow and it did not. I'm blocking. So I might give it another soak and really yank it because it's a little bit shorter than where I'd like it to be personally. It's more bracelet length, which is fine. I don't mind a bracelet length, but it does mean I find that when my sweaters aren't hitting like here, I am constantly just pulling them up to my elbows, and that's fine. But I am really happy with the way that this turned out. The other thing that the length didn't grow what I was expecting it to, and that's okay. And I've been going back and forth and picking out the edge and adding a little bit more rib. Sophie's versions have more of an extended rib than what I opted for. I cropped the body a little bit because I am short, and so I cropped the ribbing a little bit as well, thinking it would balance with the body, but I'm actually not sure if the balance is as there as I was hoping to be. The camera is very close to this couch right now, but let me see if I can kneel and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I cannot kneel tall enough for the way that this camera is set up right now. So I'm either gonna do a cutaway or I'm gonna lift this shirt up a little bit and show a little bit of skin. Be a little spicy. So here we go. So this rib here, I just wish was like almost half an inch longer. So I think the way that it sits is fine, but I think it could be better. And that's absolutely no fault of the pattern at all. The pattern is great. It has so many modifications. I just opted for one that I don't think is the one that I should have chose, if that makes sense. Sophie also has come out with a beautiful V-neck version of this that's included with the pattern. She has options for split hems and non-split hems, and so I'm really pleased with this pattern. I think it's going to be one that I reach for again if I want a simple drop shoulder. It's really nice. Most of it's in stockinette with just a little bit of detail. I think if I were to do it again, I would extend this detail on the back. The back has a beautiful seam to it, which I really like, but I think then the seam, you could have the same design going down the back, and I really like when there's symmetry to my sweaters, and so I think that if I were to knit this again, that's what I would do. I would also opt for a brighter color. I think that the reason I was dragging my feet with this a little bit was because I was knitting it and not so much of a bright color, but lessons learned, I'm just in a bright color mood right now. And the reason that the Shrike Cardigan was it took me a while to knit through this, is because I was knitting in black, and I've just got 50 shades of grayish going on in a lot of my knitwear. And you know, the funny thing that worked for me is the one knit that I have that I'm going to show next that is in bright blue. I put it in front of me and I looked at that while I knit one of these, which is absolutely ridiculous, but it meant that I was looking at a bright color, which made me happy, which made me want to knit more, and it didn't really matter the color I was knitting on. So maybe I just need like a goal yarn in front of me, being like, if you knit the grayish sweater because you know you're gonna wear the beige sweater, or gray or black or whatever, because you know it's gonna be intensely wearable, you can cast on that bright blue. Which is just, I will be the first to acknowledge it's one of the silliest things I've ever done, but it worked, and who am I to question that, honestly? So that is how I got through this sweater and how I got through the cardigan. But I've already been wearing this sweater. I've worn it a couple times. I've worn it over a dress, I've worn it with jeans, and it is a really intensely wearable garment, and so I'm really pleased with that. I want to show the back detail, so I'm going to slip back into my cardigan, but and then show you this a little bit closer up. Putting this on now, I feel like it would look really nice with a collar, you know? I don't know, would I do it in a broken rib? Maybe I'll stick a collar on something at one point. I've been wanting, so back in the day, this is a bit of a tangent, I bought the I'm gonna mess up the names of these. I think it's the Mauve shirt, the petite knit polo with the collar, because I had seen other people, and I was never interested in as a t-shirt, but I'd seen other people modify it into a long sleeve, and I still would really love to knit that. So I bought the pattern and then just never cast it on, and kept it in my back pocket as something that I'd like to do in the not so distant future. And then literally 2 weeks later, she announced the Elisabeth Blouse, which is her version of that t-shirt in a long sleeve. And so I'm like, oh shoot. So now I have the pattern for, I think it's May's shirt or something like that. I may be wrong. I'll put it up if I am. And the Elisabeth Blouse exists. So I feel like I am gonna have to, I don't want to buy another pattern, so I'd make the Maeve shirt and just adapt it to a long sleeve. But then do I post it on Ravelry as the Maeve or the Elisabeth? Because I think they're like the same, except for the sleeves. Maybe the gauge is different. I'll look into that. But and I just haven't cast them on, and I would love to, but I just haven't. So that's the tangent. I just wanted to show on the Tendreil Sweater really quick that this shoulder detailing, which I love an intentional shoulder detailing on a raglan, and I just think that this sweater does it so well with the single stitch. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I'm really happy with this, and maybe I can show you. There we go. There's the zigzag. Beautiful. I think that would look really good on a sleeve as well. I just, by the time I had to knit the sleeve for the second time, and therefore I made basically 3 sleeves for this sweater, I could not be bothered. It added so much time to the first sleeve I was doing when I was trying to do that pattern on it that I was like, it's just not worth it. And the only reason it added so much time is because I tend to knit a little bit tighter on sleeves, so sometimes I go up a size. Most of the time it's fine. I feel like I'm like a half size different, but for whatever reason I was choking those cables, and so it was really hard to pick them up and to knit them because they were so tight on the needles, and I don't know why I was choking them out so much. It just kind of happened. And the other thing, now that I'm thinking about it, that I would love to try, I think if I did a next version, there's so many things I would do, and it's not because the pattern isn't great. It is actually a testament to how great this pattern is, because I can already see all of the things that I would love to do with it. I think that that's a great kind of pattern. It's the thing that you can see so much more potential in, that you love the original but you just want to do more and more with. Is I would love to see what this would look like with a fully twisted rib everywhere. Twisted rib on the collar, twisted rib on this portion here on the cabling, twisted rib at the bottom, twisted rib on the sleeves, twisted rib on some sleeve cables. How great would that look? Now I do want to cast it on, but not right now. See, I just want to cast on so many things, and I've been trying to be very diligent with what I'm choosing to cast on because I've just got so much going on, and I've got whips still languishing from last winter, and that is the real goal. Is hopefully I will come to you next time I film one of these things with some finished objects that were started last winter, because I desperately need to get them done. This next knit is one that I'm experimenting with a little bit, and I'm not sure how I feel about my chosen experimentations. I am knitting an Italian knitting cowl from my dear friend Francesca from An Italian Knitter. Let me show you the right side. There's not much difference. And I am about halfway through this cowl, so this will fit around me like this, and it is a double wrapped. It's kind of like an infinity scarf, which is why I liked it. She also has her scarf version of it, very similar to the Sophie scarf, except it has some cool eyelet detailing, and I am just not so much a triangle scarf kind of gal, but I can see this being very useful in the dead of winter, this cowl being useful in the dead of winter here. It's already below 0 today, which is a lot for me personally. And you know what, holding it up to the camera, this doesn't look so bad. So basically I am experimenting with scraps here. This is a pattern that you are intended to knit with a DK weight yarn. Francesca's version is beautiful. I think she knit it with 2 strands of Arvetta from Filcolana, and it's really beautiful, and it looks so squishy. And I will say that this is, in my version as well, so squishy, and I can tell it'll be really nice to wear. My idea was to make a giant gradient, because if I was doing an infinity scarf, you know I'm gonna go full 2010s and go for a gradient. And I was originally gonna do it with like rainbow colors, but I just didn't have those colors in stash. So what I'm doing is I found an array of neutrals. I know, but it's filling the color quota because I'm experimenting with shades at the very least, and there is some color in here. It's just subtle, and I wanted to go from this light color to this dark color, and then I'm going to circle back again. And honestly, my favorite parts of this is this middle section, and I'm now questioning whether I just want to make the whole scarf this middle section, but I think I'm just going to finish knitting it. It's basically only going to be for dog walks anyways. I don't need to do a fashion show in this thing. I do think that this cowl has the potential to be in a fashion show if I knit it in a solid color. I think it's a fantastic pattern, and it's free. But this is my version. I'm probably just gonna finish it. I'm halfway. It went so fast, and it's gonna be so warm and so intensely wearable. So this has yarn from all over the place. I've got yarn in here from Manos del Uruguay, Koigu, I've got Knit Picks, I've got this like purpley shade that goes all through here is twist something. I've got all the information on my Ravelry page of the yarns that I'm using, but this one here is what I got at Stephen and Penelope. It was my special skein that I made a hat out of, and I had extras. So most of these are in other things, and I just had extras, and so I'm using them for this purpose. And I'm happy with how the gradient looks. I'm a little like about the black integration up here. I think I didn't have as many transition shades into the black as I would have liked, but that's okay. And I'm about at the halfway point now. I'll start going back lighter, meet back up at the end, and then I'll have a beautiful cowl scarf to wear on dog walks, to wear out and about, and I think that I will use it all the time. My favorite cowls that I have knit are the bandana cowl from Pearl Soho, which admittedly look ridiculous, but they work so well tucked into a peacoat when you're going out and about on your day. And then you don't have to faff around with like a scarf under your coat getting bunched up places. It's just the perfect thing to cover your chest when you have a silhouette like this that will just cover you up in the dead of winter. And I wear them all the time. And I think that this will do the same thing, but with even more fabric so that I can be even warmer, because something has happened to me this year where I have always run warm. Winter has never bothered me. Fall is my favorite season. I love late fall. I love when it's like this. You probably can't tell, but it's super dark in here, but the camera's picking up light well, so that's great. I thrive between 5 and 15 degrees. It's my Scottish heritage. That's where I'm most comfortable. This year, something has happened, and I am running very cold for the first time in my life. I used to never wear socks in the house. I never experienced cold feet. I was never cold. I would go outside in a spring jacket till -5. Like, the cold never bothered me. And this year I am so cold. I am so cold all the time. I am wearing like the wooliest socks. I am bundling up in a winter jacket in 5-degree weather. I am broken as a person. I don't know what happened. It's like my body chemistry changed, and I'm running cold, very cold now, and it's driving me nuts. I don't like it. And it's so cold. And the winter has not even hit, and I live in a century home, and it's freezing in this office. Thankfully, I'm just surrounded by wool, but oh my gosh, is it cold. And I don't like it. I don't know why this has happened to me. I see it as a personal attack. And so this cowl is coming into my life at a good time. I think it's gonna keep me warm enough, because that's something that I desperately need, apparently. I don't know how much to say about that. I did mess this up. If you're seeing this and you're like, oh, those edges don't look very nice. They don't. And that's not the fault of Francesca. She suggested a beautiful slip stitch edge, and I looked at the pattern and I was like, I can do that, and I did not read it. So mine does not have that. And so it looks a little bumpy on the end because it's garter and it creates bumps. And I have no excuse for that. I didn't read the pattern properly. So that's on me. And if I make another one, and if this is cozy enough, I almost definitely will. And I know she's might be making a scarf version. Also, you could probably adapt this into a scarf very easily if you want a straight scarf as opposed to a triangle scarf. And it's free. I think I mentioned that, but that's great. I didn't do the slip stitch. Whoopsies. I've got one more thing to show you, and then we can get on to the beautiful acquisitions that I've kind of been teasing back here. So I have not done a ton on this, but I've gotten a decent way through the body, and I think it will be done by next episode. And I think I'm going to do a tester call on this guy before Christmas and have it be a really long test and finish near the end of January for a late January, early February release is my thoughts on this. And it is the Calico Skies sweater. And it is looking like this. Ta-da! Am I showing the back? No, I'm showing the front. It is a saddle construction that has this beautiful braided detailing, which I love. and it is knit in the round, which is something that I also love. I wanted to figure out a way to do a saddle shoulder construction while also knitting in the round, and I have figured it out, guys. It needs a good block. That's why it's kind of puckering a little bit here, because you do all of the increases one after each other, and so this basically just needs to stretch out a bit in the blocking, but it actually looks okay. Why don't I put this on barber cords and show you how it's looking on, because I'm just so, every time I put it on, I'm so happy with it. And the color is incredible. I'm knitting it in Sandisgarn Pure Gint. I actually thought I would make a shrike in this, but it ended up being too thick. And so I am making this with it, and I'm so happy because I think it's just going to make the perfect sweater. So this is what we are looking like so far for the Calico Skies sweater. I cannot get up anymore because this is hitting just below my bust. So I've got quite a bit of body left to go. That's kind of where we are now, and I think the saddle shoulder is saddle shouldering, and the braided design goes right up into the neckline here, so you have a seamless design that will go all the way down the sleeves, which is really the hero of this design in particular. I'm super interested to see how it blocks out, to see if this puckering goes away a little bit. It should sit more like this with a bit of an oversized fit. The collar ends up taking more of a square shape, and there is some short rows in the back to lift up the neckline, so it does fit not as close to the neck here, elsewise I think it would be closer to up here. Some things that I'm thinking about in terms of fit, I'm interested to see how it blocks out, so this isn't necessarily be all end all, but I think I'm going to want to knit another yoke of this pattern before I put it out for testing. I do want to see if I can get this neckline to sit a little bit lower down like this. With a pattern design like this, the short rows in the back are a little bit difficult, but I think that there might be a way to have it sit a little bit lower like this, because I think that would probably be my preference. But I know that a lot of other people like a high sitting sweater, and so maybe that's just me being a little bit sensitive to the yarn or sensitive to something being around my throat. I know that I've been more sensitive as of late. I wore a turtleneck yesterday and it drove me nuts all day, and it was a very long day, and I was just constantly like tugging at it. So maybe I'm just ultra sensitive because of wearing a turtleneck all day yesterday, but that is something that I'm interested in. And then of course, if this puckering doesn't go away, I don't mind it terribly, but it's obviously not the intended look here. I will be looking at ways to remove that as well. Very excited to be wearing this sweater, and I'm excited to be able to knit on it a little bit more in a focused manner now that I've got the other two knits off my needles, and so this will become one of my main focuses, and the color is just unreal. I love it. This was the knit I was staring at while knitting at the knitting the other ones, just because the color is insane, and I'm falling back in love with blue again. Blue is always my favorite color growing up. I would say now I'm drawn much more towards greens, but the blues is coming back. And you know what? Blue and green in some cultures is considered the exact same color. So I guess I'm just a blue-green kind of gal. But I am so in love with this. I think that it looks really good with my skin as well, which is great. And I'm hoping that I am a good chunk of the way through this. I'm kind of interested to put this on hold and do the sleeve, because I think the sleeve is what's going to make this sweater shine, whereas right now it just kind of looks, I don't know, I don't think it's doing what I need it to be doing, but I think it's because I need to see this braid right down the sleeve, and then I think it's just gonna be like chef's kiss. That's all I have to say about this for now. Actually, when I'm leaning forward like this, it looks like a quarterback, which is very funny, but I think the accentuated shoulders actually looks really good, and it's a shape that I don't see often in knitwear, where the shoulders are accentuated by a cable like this in such a pronounced way. So I think it's a little bit unique, but that's what we got going on with this. That's all I had to share with you today of things that I've been knitting on. Honestly, those two finished objects took up so much of my time, and I haven't had as much time as I would like to be knitting because of other commitments. I've recently taken up rock climbing as well, which has been something that I've been loving in my life, and it's made the pain in my hands that I sometimes experience while knitting almost completely go away because I'm strengthening my fingers so much while climbing that I think it's just making the whole experience of knitting a lot better for me. So I was worried that these two practices would go counter to each other, that I'm just destroying my hands at every opportunity I get. And I will say, when I come home from a night of climbing, my hands are pretty sore and I don't necessarily want to be picking up the needles to knit, but I will also say that in times where I did not just immediately go rock climbing and am knitting in general, I can go for far longer without hand pain than I could before. And I think that's a testament to the strength that I'm starting to build in my hands. If you're a climber, my level right now is I'm much more of a top rope climber, and I am confident on 5/7s and am completing about 50% of the 5/8s I try, if that means anything to you. But I have been so happy. I've only been doing it for a month and I've already seen so much progress in my strength, in my stamina, in my ability to do hard problems. It's really an exercise of the body, and as I'm getting up there in the grades, it's starting to be an exercise in the mind as well, of how best can I solve this problem that is presented to me on the wall, which is really cool and something that I had never experienced when rock climbing casually before. It used to just be about getting up the wall, and now it's like, oh, I should try this different kind of hold today because I want to strengthen that in myself. And it's just opened a whole new world to me. I found that instead of knitting podcasts, I've been watching a lot of rock climbing competitions in videos, a lot of bouldering videos. It's been a whole new world I've been exploring on the internet and in real life, and it's just been really, really fun. And it's the first hobby that I found in a while that I'm not in front of the screen for, and I can't be in front of a screen for, which is amazing. That's one of the reasons I started knitting. Now I usually knit while watching something, or at the very least listening to something. And rock climbing, sometimes I'm listening to something, but most of the time I'm just in the moment climbing a wall, sometimes with friends. It is just the best. I've been loving it. And so if you haven't tried rock climbing, I highly recommend it. All of that to say is that there's been a lot going on, but I think it's ultimately going to help me not only in my life but also in my knitting, because I'm feeling a lot stronger, and that's only going to benefit me, especially with the finger strength. In terms of acquisitions, near the beginning of last month, I went to the Paris Woolstock Festival, which is one that I had been wanting to go to for several years now, and I finally got out there to go, and I will say I have some mixed feelings about it. I went in wanting specifically to buy some Canadian yarn, and I did, and that was great. It was raining pretty hard that day. I made a video about the experience on my Instagram, so if you want, you can check it out there. But I did find it to be really crowded. I found that people were not very kind as a crowd, and I found, along with a lot of other wool festivals around, that there were a lot of dyers that just didn't suit what I was looking for. I was really hoping for more Canadian milled yarn, and what I found was some of that, but mostly people who were getting yarn from other places in the world and dyeing it themselves, which of course is fine. It's just not something that I am necessarily looking for most of the time. I did, in this instance, end up buying some hand-dyed yarn, which is something that I don't usually go for, but I'm excited about in this instance because I'm trying out some cool new shops that I previously didn't know about. But I'm continuously going back to Wellington Fibers because they are making their own yarn and they have beautiful colors to boot. And so they're not speckles and rainbows, and there's certainly a place for that. I think if I was a sock knitter, I would be far more drawn to that. But when I'm going to these, I really want to see Canadian breeds of sheep and alpaca being represented, and I was just not seeing that in this fair. And that's not specific to this fair, it's specific to a lot of Canadian knitting fairs that I have been to. I will say for this fair, there was a lot of pushing. It was raining, so it kind of just smelled like wet wool. And this one woman, this is an anecdote, but I was waiting to go enter a booth. It was really busy. I was just kind of waiting for a person to back out of it so I could step into it. And she said, you need to push your way in. Something along the lines of you need to push your way in or you're not going to get anywhere. And she pushed me. She pushed me. Just wild. Wild behavior. There was a lot of that going on. No one else that was as explicit as that, but it was a bit of a bizarre experience to see people being so pushy over yarn, and you've paid to get into this place. And my thought on it is like, I'm not in any rush. Sure, maybe the favorite skein that you're looking at is going to sell out, and if it does, like, it's fine. They're all Canadian makers. You can order online, but also it's just kind of like, we're all here. We all have the same hobby. Why are we not just being nice? And why can't we just all be nice to each other? I don't know. If I met a couple of you there who watched the channel, and if I did, hello, and thank you so much for saying hi. You kind of saved the experience for me a little bit. To be fair, all of the makers that I talked to, except for one, and I'm not going to talk about that, were perfectly lovely. I would consider going back, but I will say I think I enjoyed the Kitchener Yarn Festival better. There were less animals, which is sad, but I think that the selection of yarn, at least in the year that I went versus this time around, was better. And so I'm going to be making more conscious looks of who is going to be represented at these festivals when going forward and considering which ones to go to. I'm very lucky that there's so many of these around me. They're happening all through the fall, summer, and sometimes even spring months. And so I'll just be being more cognizant of the ones that I choose to go to. And I think that's probably a better way to go about this for me in the future. In terms of what I actually purchased, I'm going to start first with the obvious. I, of course, got some Wellington fibers, and I was not expecting to get purple. There's actually a beautiful green that they dye that I thought I would get, but something about this purple just completely caught my eye. It is more of a blue tone purple. It has some tonality to it, so it goes between a very light purple and a very dark purple. And actually that reminds me something about this, is that this is their charcoal color. And I do find, I don't know if it'll show up on camera, you can tell a little bit that it looks like there's striping in here. And I do find that there is a very slight variation in the color of this yarn. And this yarn is basically the same base, a little bit different, but it's more pronounced, that color variation. You can see the differences between the dark and the light, and I am just completely, I saw it and I was just completely transfixed by it. I thought it was just the most beautiful purple I had ever seen. I guess I'm turning into a purple person now. I've never been a purple person. I've never loved purple, but I think that these blue tone purples are just really getting to me. And so I don't know what I'm going to make out of this. I've already got a purple Shrike, so that wouldn't make sense. This is their 3-ply, 60% mohair, 40% wool lace. I thought that's the other way around, actually. That explains why this is so drapey. Like, you can tell it's so, like, it just wants to flop a little bit. And it's because of that mohair content. And this is what I was saying about it all being spun in together. This is their sport base. They're 3-ply. I would say that this one's a little bit less thick than this is, so I would probably use this a little bit more like a fingering weight. I think I'm going to make a sweater out of it, because while I have my purple cardigan, I don't have a purple sweater, and I am thrilled to be able to have this. I'm very interested to see how more of the wool content will end up knitting up. And they call this Wellington lavender. I tend to think of lavender as a little bit darker, but I think it's a decent way to describe this. They also put it as a sport weight, but it's 400 yards to 115 grams. So I think it's right on that line. I will say that for this cardigan, when knitting through it, I did notice just a little bit of variation between, sometimes it would be spun, I would say the spin varies from a fingering weight and can sometimes get as thick as a DK. It was pretty consistent, but every so often I'd find a very thin little patch of yarn or a very thick patch of yarn, and I expect the same from this. I can already see a little bit of that, but I didn't notice any result in the way that the cardigan ended up looking, and so that is no problem for me. But I am thrilled with this purchase. I don't know that this will be an immediate cast on. I can see this being kind of an early spring sort of thing for me, but I just love the color and I'm really happy with it. I then found a new yarn dyer. that I was so impressed with her colors. And I say that, but you're gonna laugh at what I got, because I got the undyed version of her mohair. So this is the brand Hoka Hoka Fiber Co. It is hand dyed in Ontario. She had beautiful samples of what she dyed up. She had this incredible sample of the it's the vest that Petite Knit makes that is usually made with Noro yarn, so it has that variation. She did it with her own yarn and it was beautiful, and I was thinking of getting that exact combination, but it was a little bit brighter than what I was looking for, and so I ended up just getting her plain base in her mohair. I will say this is the softest mohair I have ever felt. It is 70% mohair and 30% silk, and she actually considers, oh no, it's a lace weight. Oh, it's the ply, that's one. So anyway, this is just such a stunning, stunning yarn. It has so much halo to it. It is coming up a little bit more yellow on the camera than I think it actually is. It definitely is a warm white, but it's definitely not as yellow as it's showing up as on camera. But I am going to be looking out for her a lot more, because I think that she's an incredible dyer and I would love to try some of her actual dyed yarn. But it just so happens that I ended up getting this fluffy one, and I got 2 of these. By the way, I got 3 Wellington fibers. I ended up getting 2 of these. I just want to pet it. It is so beautiful. And then to pair with it, I was having such a crisis of color in the yarn festival, and in general, to be honest with you. I have been so overwhelmed with color choice as of late. I just cannot, it's almost like there's not enough colors in the world. I go into a yarn store and I look at the color selection and I just have this feeling like what I'm looking for isn't there. Like there's this mysterious color out there that I cannot find, but I know I want, and I have not been able to figure it out. So I think this was starting at this yarn show where I was walking around. I wanted to get something that was a white base with a rainbow speckle. There's a Koigu yarn that I really want to get that has this exact thing. And unfortunately, Koigu was not at this festival. And so I was looking for something similar, and I didn't quite find exactly what I was looking for, but I found this brand and fell in love with their yarns, and I would love to try more of them. But I ended up going with one of hers. And so this is from the Loving Path Fiber Arts. This is their high twist sock, 75% superwash, 25% nylon in the shade Moonstone, and it is hand dyed in Canada, and it looks like this. So I ended up getting 2 of these. I do think it's really beautiful. This obviously has a lot more cool tone speckles, but I'm hoping that they go well together. Again, this is coming up way warmer than it actually is on camera. I actually think that they're gonna look really lovely together, and my idea is to make a lento with it, which I've never made before, but I've heard other people say that you're able to get a full lento, at least in around my size, with this amount of yarn. I went back and forth as to whether a tulip Guernsey would look good. I've also managed a tulip Guernsey with this amount of yarn, but I think with the speckles it's going to compete with the cables, and I think a very simple sweater like a lento would be much more suited to this yarn combination. The Loving Path, their yarn is not cheap. I would definitely say it's on the mid to higher end of hand dyed yarns, but the quality is, I haven't knit with it to be fair, but the quality of at least feeling it is unmatched. They have this stunning linen blend that I was so tempted to get a 3rd sweaters quantity of. So 1 Wellington Fibers, 2 this, 3 another one, but I just could not justify spending that much at this yarn festival. But it is very comparable to linen quill, except Canadian made and from a local business to me. And so next time I look at getting linen quill, I will definitely look to her first. There is certainly a price difference. I think they were close to $35 a skein, which is not cheap. But the more and more that I knit, the more I am drawn to local fibers that I know are going to last and that are supporting local people in my community. One of the reasons I was so excited to go to the Woolstock Paris yarn festival is because I've been thinking a lot more about Canadian yarns and Canadian makers because of the Great Canadian MKAL that I'm posting with Rachel of the Woolsey Knitting podcast. I will say that there haven't been a ton of entries yet, and so if you're wanting to win some incredible prizes, I think that it's a really great time and opportunity to do so. If you are making something from a Canadian designer, or if you're working with Canadian wool, I highly encourage you to post it and use the hashtag thegreatcanadianmkal. Rachel has MKAL, Great Canadian MKAL. I will put it up on the screen. Rachel has shown the prizes that she will be contributing, which look incredible. They are kind of little packages of Canadian wool and Canadian like stitch markers and things, which I think is incredible. In terms of what I'm donating for the prize bin, I have this incredible vintage wool that's from 1980 that I found, and it is from Blythe, Ontario, and I have 6 skeins of this, so this will be either a sweaters quantity or a sweater vest quantity. Your mileage may vary. It's a worsted. It is, I think, quintessential Canadian homegrown yarn, and I think it's really cool to be knitting a little piece of Canadian history as well. This will be washed and then sent out to the prize winner. And the other one, I was planning on donating a skein of Canadian alpaca as well, but I went to the place that I usually go to get that and they were closed, and I don't know if they're closed forever or if they were just closed that day, but instead, just to make life a little bit easier, this skein is I would say more kind of the other side of Canadian knitting on the dyeing side. And so this is from the Knitting Loft, which is a quite famous knitting store in Toronto, Ontario. And this is their La Di Da base and the shade Espresso. And I got this because I am just always drawn to these browny purpley shades. I think this is absolutely stunning. I hope that you'll love it as well. Their La Di Da base is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon. And you get 384 meters or 420 yards. I've been holding on to this to make something special, and so instead I will be to one of you guys to be able to make something special out of it. This is such a beautiful yarn and it feels so nice as well, and so I'm so excited to figure out or to see what one of you guys end up making out of it. We also have Jenny of Honeybird Studio. She lives out on the West Coast. She has graciously donated 2 versions of her Brooklyn shawl design, which I think is absolutely beautiful. If I was a shawl maker at all, I would certainly be casting it on. It is stunning, so you could also win one of 2 versions of her shawl as well. And we also had a local yarn producer, yarn dyer, Ginger Snap, that also reach out and donate one of their lumberjack sock sets, and so that is fantastic as well. So you can also enter to win one of their sets, which are beautiful. Again, if I was a sock knitter, I would certainly be very excited about that. But their socks are stunning. It's exactly the kind of thing that I want to be wearing in winter. And so if you want to enter to win any of these prizes, you just have to post on Instagram with the hashtag thegreatcanadianmkal. We are so thrilled to be hosting this, and we are so immensely happy with everything that we've seen so far. It's been great to see people come around Canadian fibers. And then speaking quickly of the Knitting Loft, I ended up in downtown Toronto last Thursday. I'm there every Thursday for work, and I usually take the train in, but I drove in to pick someone up from the airport, and I had some time between finishing work and getting to the airport. And you know what is directly on the way to the airport is the Knitting Loft, which I previously talked about. I didn't need any yarn. I didn't have any plans going in, which was my first mistake. And so I went in and wandered for a very long time. And this is, again, I'm staring at walls of beautiful, beautiful yarn, and just none of the colors are speaking to me. And so I went with something safe. I ended up picking up 2 skeins of Ulysses in this dark blue color. And I got this specifically to make some gloves for my husband and I to share. I made some fingerless gloves and I wear them all the time, and my husband will sometimes reach for them and wear them as well. And we could certainly use a second pair and one that is a little bit longer up the arm as well. So this will be a project of necessity in the not so distant future, but I thought that this blue color was both beautiful and I thought would go with all of our coats. So that's why I selected this. This is 100% wool in the shade Nui, and it's really beautiful. And I am excited to knit something with Ulysses because I have never used this yarn before. I did thrift some from this brand. I think it's Gilead, but I like this color a lot and I'm excited to knit with it. I was going to talk as well about a new test that I'm on that I haven't started, that I've been kind of wishy-washy about what yarn I want to use for it, but I have already been talking for so long that my throat's getting a little dry, and I think I'm going to end it here. So I will talk a lot more about that test in an upcoming episode because I've got a lot to say about it already, and I'm very excited for the sweater that's going to come out of it. So I will be casting that on hopefully this week, and I'm really excited to share that with you guys. So lots of fun stuff to come. I cannot wait to see what you're working on. Definitely enter the Great Canadian Make Along, and thank you again for Luisa for sponsoring this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!